for my fathers, I need you to listen to me. I don't need you to, but consider listening to me. So I'm just leaving the gym, doing a little workout. I was talking to a friend from a mastermind guy that I know. We're working out, talking about just processing things from the previous day of our mastermind, which was heavy day. And so a conversation came up about his father and, just some things that are there in that relationship that we'll just say aren't ideal, which is almost every relationship between a father and a son. And we know from, as men, as once boys, of a father, depending upon whatever that relationship was to you and your father, how important it was, whether you realize the significance and the impact of your father's role in your life or you don't. I think most of you do. But we know historically and biblically the importance of a blessing being passed down from a father to a son in the stories of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And the feeling, the impact it can have on us as men to receive a blessing or just feel the blessing of our Father, what that can do changes the trajectory of a child's life. It changes how they perceive themselves. It changes their relationship between them and God. It changes everything. And the opposite is also true. When we do not receive the blessing from our Father, when we do not receive our Father's love or acknowledgement, and that blessing, typically the opposite is true. You will see men's lives spiral out of control or just be in a place of just brokenness, unfulfillment, and just there's this emptiness inside. Various levels for everyone. I'm not trying to be over extreme, but there is truth in this. For those of you that know, you know. So he was sharing this story, about his relationship with his father. And it reminded me of a story that occurred in my life. This was probably my late 20s. And, I was in a childhood. My parents and my father was a good man. And always provided for me and my family, was always there. But I never received a blessing from my father. I never received a verbal blessing from him. He wasn't a father that would say, I love you, or I'm proud of you, or anything like that. And, bothered me. It's not something like I stewed upon or thought about or whatever. It's kind of like a hidden code, right? Like that's in our kind of a part of our DNA that we don't even really know it's there unless we start doing some deep soul work. So I was fortunate enough, my late 20s, early 30s actually, now I think about it, early 30s, because I had become an entrepreneur. I had left my job. I was beginning to become quote unquote successful. But I'll be honest, like part of me felt like I was not pursuing success for the sole benefits of me and my family, but it was like I had something to prove to other people, and I think part of that was probably my father. So I was in this mastermind. This is in my early 30s, not yesterday. Different mastermind. You should be in masterminds if you're not catching the theme here. And if you want to be successful, I'm just saying, all the successful people I know were in masterminds, and I've been in masterminds for the last 18 years now since I've gotten real estate or business. So I'm in this mastermind, and I met a guy. He wrote, I forget his name. He wrote a book, and it was called Letters from Dad. Letters from Dad. You might want to check this book out if you watch the rest of this video and this resonates with you. So here's the story of the book. As he shared it with me, and I later read his book, and it impacted me deeply. So he had a similar experience growing up where his father never said, I love you. And ultimately, his father passed away without ever telling him that he loved him. And that always was heavy on this gentleman's heart. So, after his father passed away, they are cleaning out his father's garage, and his kids are there and they're throwing stuff away or putting stuff to give away, whatever they're doing. And one of the kids brings a tackle box, and a fishing tackle box. He's like, Dad, what should we do with this tackle box? And he's like, well, that's just old tackle box. Like, you can throw that away. It's junk. It's not good. It's not worth anything. Then he says, you know what? Hold on. Wait a second. He's like, my father bought that tackle box for me, and he took me fishing when I was a kid. And so ultimately, you know, what he realized was like, my father did love me. He just didn't say the words that he loved me, but his action said that he loved me. He provided for me, my family. He did do things for me. He took me fishing. He bought me this tackle box. He was expressing love, or else he would not have done the things that he did for me. So he came to, accept his father's love by his actions. And ultimately what he did was he took some time and wrote a love letter, essentially like a letter to honor and acknowledge his father for all that he did. And he took that letter and he went to his gravesite and read it to his father, and just experienced like just like a releasing, right, of these things, these kind of like these shackles or burdens on his heart, and received some healing from that. And what he ultimately did was began writing letters to his children. And he said, I never want my children to ever doubt for one moment that I never loved them. So he began writing these letters to his children. He gave them like a little keepsake box so they could keep them in there. And it started a movement, like going through all these churches and men's groups where men would get together and write these letters to one another. Okay. Pretty cool deal. So I went home from that mastermind, read the book, brought me to tears, and I started thinking about relationship with my father and with my children. And what it ultimately led me to do, though, was to write a letter for my father, to my father. And I wrote the letter just basically, even though, I know he had a hard time expressing his love and emotions, I wanted to get this off my chest with him. So I wrote this letter, shared it with my wife, and my wife was like, well, you have to give it to him. You have to read it to him. I'm not going to read this thing to him. I'm probably going to give it to him, but there's no way I was going to read it to him. She's like, you must. You must. And I knew she was right. And I'll shit you not, like, the single hardest thing that I have ever done in my life was reading that letter to my father. So I invited him to lunch. I said, hey, can we have lunch? I'll meet you down by your work and take you to lunch. He said, sure. So we met for lunch. I pulled out that letter in this restaurant, people all around us. And I start reading the letter, and I'm just basically thanking him for all that he did, the sacrifices he made for providing for my family, staying by my mother's side. It's all that he did. It's just an appreciation letter. And I told him that I loved him the first time I did that. And I'm like in tears. I'm crying. He's basically, he's just still motionless a little bit. And his response was thank you. Not I love you. It was thank you. But I could see it in his eyes. Did I want him to say, I love you too, son? Yeah, I did. But he didn't. And that was okay. I needed that release. I needed him to hear from me. So hearing him say, I love you, after that moment became less important, almost insignificant, because I knew that he did. And it made me honor him and love him and respect him at a deeper level, because I started thinking about his childhood and his experience and his conditioning, which my grandfather, although I didn't barely know, was just hard as nails, kind of Southern Baptist, take no kind of shit kind of dude. So, truth of the matter is, I never told my dad he loved him. He was a hard ass son of a bitch. So there's a reason my dad is like he is, and that's okay, because I honor and I love him. So, for you men out there, especially for you who are fathers now yourself, and you've got baggage and you've got shit from your fathers, like, rather than staying in a, a victim role or whatever you want to call it, and moaning and crying about what your father, coulda, woulda, shoulda stuff, how about you just honor your father? How about you just find honor and appreciation for whatever he did, or even for what he didn't do? Because for what he didn't do, for those of you who had a father that was absent, or an asshole, or he beat you, or whatever he did, there's a good chance you're stronger for it, and maybe you can even find honor and appreciation. So how about you as fathers begin to honor your fathers, no matter what the story or the circumstance is? And I think that you do, as you find honor in your heart for your father, and love and forgiveness, you'll find a healing as well. And this is definitely like the law of reciprocation, my friends. Like, you're going to want your children to honor and love and respect you, and your children are going to mirror how you act and what you do as a man. And I know that you're going to want your children to honor and love and appreciate you. So how about you take the lead as a man, and you honor, respect, and appreciate your father?